Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to LW Radio. And today we're going to be going over a couple of topics. We're going to talk about Monday Night Raw, as well as preview the Night of Champions pay-per-view coming up this Sunday. But before we get into both of those, we just read an interview with Triple H, which we weren't even planning to talk about, but since it brings up interesting discussion. Triple H says, when asked, how do you think WWE and pro wrestling needs to evolve as UFC and MMA grows in popularity? Triple H basically says it's UFC needing to evolve and not WWE. So, yeah, basically, Triple H's whole reason, and I could put this in the description box when it gets posted, so if you're listening and you're like, where the hell can I see this? Of course, I'm sure it's out on many sites already. But basically, Triple H thinks UFC needs to do more entertainment stuff, and yeah, Triple H, I don't. It seems like he's trying to turn the UFC into pro wrestling with his comment, which I can agree about some of the stuff he says. When he says that guys just go in there and when they win they say thanks and then say they're sponsors and then leave. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Most of the time it does, but quite frankly, that's. I think UFC is working on that.
I don't know.
So
I mean, if you want to be realistic about it, how Raw is, scripted and how that things have to be done a certain way, whereas in UFC you have guys who are there to earn their keep, and if they lose a fight, some of them get fired right away. And it takes a lot more skill to be a UFC fighter than it does to be a wrestler. And I don't think you can bring the entertainment section into it as much as wrestling does for itself, because it's really, in a way, it's two different things.
yeah, but when you're trying to build to a fight, like they also talked about Floyd Mayweather and saying he makes the most money in boxing and he has the biggest fight rates because he has the biggest mouth. It's like that's true, but I think UFC can have a guy like him. You just need to win. The thing is in boxing you can go on these big, long, undefeated streaks, but you can't really do that in MMA because a guy can catch you out of nowhere, and there's just so much more stuff that goes on in MMA fight.
Right, you don't know what to expect.
Yeah, so like you can have a guy talk a lot of shit. I guess Chael Sonnen would be a great example. So Chael Sonnen, he's talking a lot of shit about Anderson Silva. He'll talk a lot of shit about anybody, especially from Brazil. And then, but like the thing is he can go in there if he would win a lot of fights. Keep on focus on him throughout the whole pre-show, build up to the fight, and him just running his mouth. And if he keeps on winning, people are going to want to see somebody eventually shut Chael up. And it's basically almost like the same thing that you get in wrestling. The fact of the matter is in MMA, it's a lot tougher to build these guys up. And it's just, they got to try to do it themselves.
You can respect the sport because of that.
Yeah, and Triple H is sort of like trying to turn it more into pro wrestling with guys coming out with gimmicks and stuff. This is what it seems like. Oh, he just comes out with a T-shirt. It's like, what do you want him to do? Like, come out with a gimmick? Like, really? Like, will that be better? He brings up the point that Brock, after he won his fight against Frank Mir and talked shit about the sponsors and things like that. It's like the reason why people didn't like, quite frankly, Bud Light gave a lot of money to sponsor UFC, and they don't want. But did you watch that fight with Frank Mir and Brock Lesnar and what he said afterwards?
Well, is that the one where he flicked off the fans, or?
Yeah, he flicked them off, and then he was like, I'm going to go home, and I'm not going to drink a Bud Light. I'm going to drink a Coors Light because Bud Light don't pay me enough money to sponsor them. It's like, yeah, you can say that, but the sponsors are going to get pissed off. It's like, it's the same thing with WWE, okay? If, I don't know any toy companies, but let's just say that CM Punk goes out there and he says, Mattel, don't pay me enough money to talk about them. I'm going to talk about Toy Company A. It's going to be like, okay, you just gave Toy Company A a bunch of sponsors, or just a bunch of press. Mattel is going to be fucking pissed off because like, we're paying you all this money, and you're not you're just gonna let him bring up our competition. It's like, we're paying you the money so you can sponsor us. And that's the whole deal with that. That's why fans, I don't know if fans really got pissed off. That's why they got pissed off and stuff like that. So it's like, wrestling and MMA, I think they're both very similar. Triple H doesn't think so. Vince McMahon don't think so. I think deep inside they do think so. They just don't want to admit it because there are many, many similarities. The biggest difference, yeah, one's real, one's fake. But when you go at the basis, both companies have the same goal. Let's build to a fight that people are willing to pay to see. And UFC is doing that a hell of a lot better than WWE is doing that right now.
But is he really talking about building or in-ring?
He's talking about, I mean, that's sort of the way that I see it. I mean, he's saying that that UFC needs to evolve. And it's like, UFC got big. Okay, WWE, it'd be like the Attitude Era. I mean, UFC is getting where they're making a lot of money a year. They're going to be making a whole lot more with this Fox deal, where they're going to be making like, I don't know if it's like $60 million a year or something, 60 or 90 million. I forget exactly what it is.
And they're doing what, pay-per-view things on that, or are they just doing regular?
Just doing 4 shows a year, 4 big shows a year on Fox, and Ultimate Fighter is going to be on FX, and many different things like that. But it's like, when WWE made all their money, it's like, I'm tough trying to think of this, but WWE is not going to evolve if they're making a lot of money. I mean, right now, they need to evolve because they're losing viewers. And that's the whole deal. It's like, I guarantee you, if UFC started dropping their pay-per-view numbers, if their pay-per-view numbers started dropping, Dana White's not going to sit there and say, let's do this, or let's try something else. Let's hire a new booker, or add some guys to the booking team. Okay, that's that failing. We're gonna keep that up for years, and hopefully eventually turn around. It's basically what WWE is doing. They're hiring just writers out of Hollywood. Their ratings are dropping. Pay-per-view numbers are dropping. They don't want to hire actual wrestling writers that know what they're doing. So their numbers are dropping out. We're going to just keep this up because, quite frankly, we're just going to make our money. We're going to make it either way. There's nothing really hurting us. And if they keep on doing this, eventually they could get into trouble. They're not going to get into trouble because they're making a lot of money with their TV deal. But the fact is, if they want to ever make more money, they're going to have to evolve because wrestling, there's so many problems in WWE, and it's more of, if they had writers that knew what the hell they were doing, they can do a good job, but they don't. They hire writers who most of the time aren't even wrestling fans, because if you are a wrestling fan, you're most likely not going to get the job because that's not who they're looking for. So, I mean, it's WWE that more, really, I'd say WWE needs to evolve more than UFC. UFC is growing in popularity. They're going to make the most money they probably ever made this upcoming year. So, I mean, why the hell do they?
Makes you wonder, though, if he said that they didn't need to evolve, then why this whole shoot thing with Punk?
Yeah, I mean,
that to me was like a full-blown, out of nowhere 360. I don't know how to describe properly because it's just, I didn't see that coming from a mile away, and that was just fantastic. And what they're doing now is fantastic, but it's going to get stale soon. But that looks like they're trying to evolve to me.
Yeah, Triple H and Vince and whoever they interview that's top in the company, they're not going to tell you that this company is failing and UFC is doing better than us and UFC is our competition. They're not going to say that. So I take what Triple H says with a grain of salt. I mean, is there things UFC can better do to make it more entertainment? Because in the end, also UFC wants to entertain the fans, absolutely. But I mean, you can't say UFC needs to evolve when they're constantly growing in popularity and they just signed a multi-million-dollar deal where they're going to be making $30 million more per year with this TV deal or something like that. So you can't say they need to evolve when they're making a hell of a lot more money than WWE is right now, and they keep on growing.
Well, I think we can go on with this forever, so we should move on to the Raw review.
Yeah, probably. So